Welcome to Simple Faith, where our goal is to help make faith simple on a daily basis. This week we're asking, how does Jesus feel about prodigals? We've heard the term before. How does he feel about it? Well, most of us know the most famous story from the Bible. A rebellious son leaves home, wastes everything, and eventually returns. It's a notorious story. Everyone's probably heard some version of this before, of a son that runs away and wonders if he can come home. Here's the interesting thing. Most people think this story is about a lost son. Jesus seems to think it's about a loving father. And when we understand that, everything changes. Let's talk about it. When you look at this story, it begins with a shocking request. A younger son comes to his father and says, "Give me my share of the inheritance." Now, to modern ears, that may not sound outrageous, but to Jesus' audience, it was scandalous. An inheritance was normally received after a father's death. The son is essentially saying, I want what belongs to you, but I don't want you. I'd rather have your stuff than a relationship with you. It's hard to imagine a more painful rejection. Yet, the father allows it. He doesn't chain the son to the property. He doesn't force obedience. He doesn't manipulate. He lets him leave. That's important because love doesn't control. Love allows freedom, even when freedom results in heartbreak. Some people wonder why God allows people to walk away. Why doesn't he force them back? Why doesn't he overpower their choices? Because forced love isn't love. God gives people the dignity of free choice, even when that choice breaks his heart. The younger son leaves and heads for what he thinks is freedom. No rules, no accountability, no authority, no father, just independence. But here's the irony. What begins as freedom eventually becomes slavery. What begins as pleasure eventually becomes emptiness. What begins as excitement eventually becomes loneliness. Sin always overpromises and underdelivers. The farther he gets from home, the more lost he becomes. And that's always the pattern. When we leave God, we don't merely lose direction, we lose ourselves. Maybe you've experienced this personally. Maybe there was a season when you drifted. Maybe there are areas where you're drifting right now. Ask yourself, where am I pursuing God's blessings more than God's presence? Because that's where the prodigal journeys often begin. Our spiritual discipline of the week is this idea and this concept of returning. Doesn't sound like much of a discipline, but it can be if you put attention to it. Today, identify one area where you've drifted spiritually. Not your whole life, just one area. Maybe prayer, maybe trust, maybe obedience, maybe forgiveness, and simply acknowledge it before God. Returning always begins with honesty. Well, thanks for joining me on Simple Faith. Tomorrow we'll discover what happened when the son finally hit rock bottom and why that's often where grace begins. I'll see you then. Share this with a friend, and as always, keep it simple.